After reviewing the professional dispositions for learners and reflecting on my own teaching practice, I found that a teacher's role goes further than supporting learning, improving planning and practice, upholding professional expectations, and collaboratively advancing the profession. I believe that our primary role as educators is to create a quality classroom environment where every student feels safe, included, and valued. When I think of the roles that my teachers played when I was in school, I can't help but think about how their own ability to model the behavior and love for the content inspired me to adopt the same qualities. In fact, every year, I love telling my students that as educators, it is our primary responsibility to not only teach content, but also teach them life skills they can apply to their academics and real-life problems as they get older. For example, when I teach students about time management, we usually do a visualizing activity where scholars place themselves into their parents' shoes. By doing so, students understand that their parents work hard to make an income to afford rent, laundry, food, clothing, and even transportation. They also begin to see how crucial time management skills can be when balancing a 40-hour work week while also trying to raise children and even have a personal life. Even further, scholars start to understand that lacking these skills can lead to further consequences, such as going homeless due to not paying rent on time, missing a deadline and eventually failing a class because of that, among many other consequences. Scholars also see how these skills are transferable to their personal lives. At the same time, I believe that our roles as educators also extend to us being coaches, mentors, and guides to our students as they look up to us as role models, guides to success, and just even individuals they can speak to about things that may be stressing them or lingering in their minds. In terms of professional dispositions, I believe I have strong professional conduct and respect for the diversity of others. I always do my best to take into consideration how a student's social needs, as well as their cultural background, can impact their learning. I believe that I'm also honest, respectful of my students and colleagues, as well as compassionate and dedicated. Even more, I believe that I hold a strong sense of reflection. This is a value that I try to model day in and day out for my students, whether that be reflecting after the end of every class on ways that I could have improved the lesson, or even just reflecting in general terms on ways that I could have improved as a human being. However, I feel that as an educator, I can improve my ability to foster curiosity. I have realized that modeling this curiosity is just only the first step, because scholars need to also exhibit some form or level of intrinsic motivation in order to achieve 100% curiosity. Often, I find that I can engage students in conversations beyond the scope of the classroom to understand some of the challenges that they face, but in many times, I also get sucked into meeting certain deadlines or just flat out teaching the content so much that I stray away from taking the time to guide students through the problem-solving process. Now, personal biases can hinder the quality of learning your students obtain because they can affect the relationship or rapport you develop with your students. For example, when I think about personal biases I have experienced in the past, I think of how at the start of my teaching career, I will be lenient towards certain students when grading due to their situations at home, Wi-Fi issues, any tech issues, being the older sibling in the household, and for lack of better words, even found that on some occasions my biases revolved around favoritism. However, I also realized very early on that this was a disadvantage to my students and myself. I learned that regardless of whom they were, always holding my students to a higher bar of excellence rather than lowering it would lead students to reach the best version of themselves and achieve higher academic outcomes. In fact, in the professional dispositions of learners, it mentions that educators must reflect or combine their reflections with their experiences in order to see some professional growth. So, as a teacher candidate, I would uphold and adhere to academic and professional integrity by continuing to reflect on my practice, planning ahead, observing my colleagues, and being fair and respectful of my students and their families as well as our community. In addition, I will uphold academic and professional integrity by continuing to model for students what it looks like to be compassionate, dedicated, and curious, not only about the content we are learning, but also about each other. This generation of students that we hold in our classrooms, they're the future of our world. And it is our role as educators to coach, guide, and mentor our students through their academic experiences.